Welcome to Lady E's Dark Tales. Have you ever felt completely invisible in your own life? Like no matter what you do, people look right through you as if you don't exist? Tonight, we explore the dark consequences when an overlooked office worker discovers a mysterious computer with the power to delete not just words, but people, and eventually, reality itself. Dim the lights, silence your devices, and prepare yourself for a chilling tale of revenge, power, and the terrifying malleability of what we think is real in a story I call The Delete Key.
Have you ever felt completely invisible? Not just overlooked, but fundamentally unseen even when you're doing everything right? I'm talking about that awful feeling where you might as well be shouting into a void. That was my daily existence at Meridian Analytics in Portland, Maine. I was the forgotten accountant whose insights were stolen, whose contributions were ignored, and whose presence seemed to irritate people for reasons I couldn't understand. Then came that strange computer. Now I know the truth. Reality is nothing but code, lines upon lines of programming just waiting for someone with the right tools to rewrite it. And trust me, I've become quite the programmer. My name is Nathan Webb. I'm 34 years old and I've spent 7 years of my life at Meridian Analytics as a senior financial analyst. 7 years of arriving early and leaving late. 7 years of spotless reports and innovative cost-cutting strategies that somehow always became someone else's brilliant idea when presented to the executive team. I excelled at my job. You could even say I was brilliant. But excellence doesn't matter when perception outweighs performance and charm trumps competence. The pattern was maddening in its predictability. Each morning, I'd arrive at the office before anyone else, meticulously organize my workspace, review the day's objectives, and prepare for the morning briefing. I'd present carefully researched proposals only to watch eyes glaze over, hear throats clear impatiently, and feel the collective energy of the room deflate. Then, like clockwork, Jackson from business development would repackage my exact recommendation 40 minutes later, and suddenly it was revolutionary thinking. The team would practically applaud while Eliza from creative strategy gazed at him with undisguised admiration. I'd retreat to the break room for lunch, alone with my turkey sandwich and spreadsheets, forced to overhear animated discussions about weekend gatherings I was never invited to join. They'd talk about amazing brewery visits and upcoming Friday plans not 3 feet from where I sat, as if I were invisible. All, apparently, didn't include me. After lunch, I'd inevitably find my inbox flooded with urgent requests requiring immediate attention, the digital equivalent of being handed a mop after everyone else made a mess. The salary review in December was what finally cracked my professional composure. A misplaced document in the shared drive revealed the uncomfortable truth. I was earning 32% less than Jackson and Eliza despite having more experience and consistently higher performance metrics. When I raised this discrepancy with human resources, Vanessa tilted her head sympathetically and suggested I focus on developing stronger interpersonal connections if I wanted to advance my career, as if being underpaid was somehow a reflection of my character rather than the company's exploitation. In January, CEO Marcus Fletcher announced a company-wide technology upgrade with his typical theatrical flair. Everyone would receive new state-of-the-art computers to propel Meridian into the future of analytics. The office buzzed with excitement, everyone speculating about processing speeds and monitor sizes like children before Christmas. I watched with growing resentment as each department received their gleaming new equipment. Jackson made a production of unboxing his system, exclaiming loudly at each component while Eliza leaned over his shoulder, laughing at comments that weren't remotely humorous. When the IT team finally reached the finance department, Carson, the lead technician, avoided meeting my eyes. He mumbled something about miscounting and my replacement not being there yet, hopefully arriving next week. Of course, even in this, I was an afterthought. 8 days later, they wheeled in something different. A sleek, matte black tower with no brand logo or identifying markers. The technician, one I hadn't seen before, installed it with unusual haste, his movements jerky and awkward. When I asked where it came from, he muttered something about supply chain issues and this being what was available. He claimed it actually had better specs than the standard issue. His hands trembled slightly as he connected the final cables. When I pressed him about whether something was wrong, he just advised me to run the security updates. He started to say something else, but stopped himself, then told me to enjoy my new system before backing toward the door. I should have noticed how quickly he left, how he wiped his palms on his pants as if trying to clean away something invisible. But I was too focused on not being overlooked again. 3 days later, I was updating the quarterly financial projections when voices from the conference room drew my attention. Through the glass partition, I watched as Director Bennett enthusiastically presented my liquidity improvement strategy, the one he had dismissed as too aggressive when I proposed it last month, with Jackson's name prominently displayed on the cover slide. Something snapped inside me. A dam of accumulated resentments finally broke, flooding my mind with white-hot rage. Without conscious thought, I opened a blank document on my new computer and typed, "I wish Jackson would spill coffee all over himself during his big presentation to the executive team." I stared at the words, momentarily shocked by the intensity of my own bitterness. Embarrassed, I quickly deleted the text, erasing the evidence of my pettiness. Not 90 seconds later, a commotion erupted from the conference room. Through the glass, I watched Jackson leaping from his chair, coffee cascading down his crisp white shirt and onto his laptop. Papers scattered as people rushed to help, the presentation forgotten in the chaos. I sat paralyzed, a chill creeping up my spine despite the office's aggressive air conditioning. The timing was impossible, a bizarre coincidence that defied logical explanation. Unless I glanced at my new computer, its screen reflecting my wide-eyed stare. A wild, impossible theory began forming in my mind, one I needed to test immediately. The following morning, I arrived even earlier than usual, eager to experiment. My first subject was Rebecca, the front desk coordinator who had been deliberately mispronouncing my name for 3 years, despite countless corrections. I opened a new document and carefully typed, "Rebecca accidentally sends her personal shopping list to the entire company instead of her friend." I hesitated only briefly before hitting delete, watching the words disappear character by character. At 9:17 a.m., the office erupted in poorly suppressed laughter. Rebecca was frantically trying to recall an email, her face flushed crimson as she realized her detailed list that included items like hemorrhoid cream and extra-strength dandruff shampoo had already been opened by most of the staff. I observed from a distance, clinical interest overriding any sense of compassion. The coincidence theory was rapidly collapsing. I needed more evidence. My next target was Gregory, the facilities manager who had ignored my 6 maintenance requests for the flickering fluorescent light above my desk. I typed that his keycard would stop working, forcing him to wait outside in the rain for someone to let him in. Then I deleted it. That afternoon, I watched through the lobby windows as Gregory stood dripping wet by the security door, repeatedly swiping his card to no effect, while the spring downpour soaked through his jacket. 20 minutes he waited before someone finally noticed him. The pattern was undeniable. What I typed and then deleted became reality. I should have been horrified by this impossible power. I should have been questioning my sanity or the fundamental nature of existence. Instead, I felt something intoxicating bloom within me: control. After years of helplessness, I finally had leverage against a world that had consistently undervalued me. I began noticing peculiarities about the computer as my experiments continued. The keys remained cool regardless of how long I typed. Sometimes, when working late, I'd catch fleeting reflections in the monitor, symbols that resembled no language I recognized, disappearing when I tried to focus on them directly. The hard drive emitted a subtle hum that seemed to synchronize with my heartbeat after extended use. I dismissed these oddities as stress-induced hallucinations. Nothing could distract me from the intoxicating power at my fingertips. My attention eventually, inevitably, turned to Jackson and his relationship with Eliza. Their romance wasn't official, but their lingering glances and synchronized lunch breaks told the story clearly enough. One morning, after watching him casually place a latte on her desk, when my own coffee offering months ago had been met with barely concealed suspicion, I gave in to temptation. I typed that Jackson would make an inappropriate comment during the client presentation, then deleted it. That afternoon, during the Westbrook proposal review, Jackson inexplicably compared their marketing strategy to putting lipstick on a corpse. The client representatives stiffened, Eliza winced visibly, and Director Bennett quickly intervened with forced laughter about creative metaphors. Jackson appeared genuinely confused by his own statement, as if the words had bypassed his brain entirely. But my satisfaction faded quickly as I observed them laughing together in the break room just hours later, the incident apparently forgiven. I needed something more impactful, something that couldn't be brushed aside so easily. After learning that Jackson had been selected to lead the Davidson account, a project I had essentially built from scratch, I typed that his work quality would deteriorate noticeably, then deleted it. The effects materialized gradually, but undeniably. Jackson began missing deadlines. His reports contained calculation errors and incomplete analyses. Clients started requesting clarifications on his projections. His trademark confidence wavered as criticism mounted. I watched his descent with fascination, taking particular pleasure in how Eliza's admiring glances became increasingly rare. My defining moment arrived during the quarterly performance review. Despite having salvaged 3 failing accounts and implemented a tracking system that increased departmental efficiency by 22%, Director Bennett acknowledged my contributions with a cursory, solid work, before lavishing praise on others for achievements I had quietly engineered. That evening, while working late, I crossed a line I hadn't previously contemplated. I typed that the office would temporarily ostracize Alan from client services, then deleted it. The next day was fascinating from a purely observational standpoint. Alan attended meetings where his comments went unacknowledged. He waved at colleagues who looked through him as if he were invisible. He placed documents on desks that remained untouched, emails that went unread. By afternoon, his composure had completely disintegrated. He stood in the center of the main office, shouting for attention, tears streaming down his face as people walked around him, their expressions unchanged. He was eventually escorted to Human Resources and sent home for a mental health break. I observed the entire spectacle with scientific detachment, marveling at how reality could be so precisely manipulated. I had made someone experience my daily reality, and the experiment had yielded exactly the results I expected. Nobody can maintain sanity when their existence is systematically denied. Emboldened by success and fueled by a particularly humiliating interaction with Director Bennett about a minor formatting inconsistency, while Jackson's incomplete client analysis was deemed good enough under the circumstances, I returned to my desk with a dangerous new idea forming. I typed that Alan from Client Services never existed. My finger hovered over the delete key as ethical considerations briefly surfaced. I remember wondering what happens to someone who's erased from existence. Do they simply vanish? Or continue in some parallel dimension, unaware they've been deleted from our collective reality? The hesitation lasted only moments before years of accumulated resentment overwhelmed any moral reservations. I pressed delete. The computer's reaction was violent and immediate. The screen flickered erratically, displaying momentary bursts of incomprehensible code. The tower vibrated against my desk, while the overhead lights dimmed for several seconds. When everything stabilized, I noticed subtle but profound changes throughout the office. Alan's desk was gone, not empty, but completely absent, as if that section of office space had always been used for the potted ficus that now stood in its place. The team photo on the wall had rearranged itself, the remaining people shifting to close the gap where Alan had stood. The client distribution list on the shared drive showed no trace of his name or accounts. When I asked Carson from IT if he had seen Alan today, his expression showed genuine confusion. When I clarified that I meant Alan Morris from Client Services, who had been there for 3 years, Carson looked concerned and said we didn't have anyone named Alan in Client Services, asking if I was feeling okay. I had erased a human being from existence, from memory, from reality itself, and I was the only one who remembered he had ever existed at all. The realization of what I'd accomplished should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a cold, calculating precision taking control of my thoughts. I began approaching the situation methodically, creating a system for what had previously been emotional reactions. I started keeping a leather-bound notebook documenting workplace grievances, categorizing them by severity and potential solutions. The receptionist who always forgot to alert me about deliveries, gone with a few keystrokes, the team leader who consistently scheduled meetings during my lunch break, erased from existence. With each deletion, the office subtly reorganized itself to accommodate the changes, like water filling a void. New memories formed for everyone except me. I alone preserved the original reality, making me both archivist and architect of this evolving world. The computer itself seemed to be evolving. The case remained cool despite running continuously. The hum grew more complex, almost melodic during certain operations. Occasionally, when working late, I'd notice the shadow it cast didn't always match its physical dimensions, stretching or contracting in ways that defied the office lighting. After the first week, any lingering guilt had been replaced by a sense of righteous efficiency. I wasn't destroying. I was optimizing, streamlining an environment that had been hostile to me for years. Each deletion improved my professional landscape incrementally. I was careful to maintain the basic structure of the company, ensuring the changes appeared natural to those remaining. Jackson, however, presented a unique opportunity. I noticed he had begun detecting inconsistencies in the altered reality. I overheard him questioning Eliza about that guy with the red hair who handled the Northeastern accounts. Her blank expression didn't deter him. He started maintaining notes about perceived changes in the office layout and questioning discrepancies in the company directory. Rather than simply erasing him, I decided to orchestrate a more satisfying downfall. I typed that Jackson would accidentally send confidential financial projections to a competitor, then deleted it. The following morning, the office was in an uproar when they discovered that Jackson had attached internal strategic forecasts to an email sent to our primary competitor's acquisition team. His protests about account hacking fell on deaf ears when IT security confirmed the message originated from his computer while he was actively logged in. Next, I typed that Jackson's personal drive would contain unauthorized client information, then deleted it. Within days, compliance was conducting a full audit of his digital footprint. He was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. I crafted my masterpiece gradually, systematically constructing evidence of financial impropriety dating back months. Each deletion rewrote small fragments of reality, a modified timestamp here, an altered email exchange there, until proof of misconduct existed everywhere, though Jackson himself had no recollection of any wrongdoing. His deterioration was fascinating to observe. The confident, charismatic golden boy transformed into a paranoid, desperate figure seemingly overnight. He cornered colleagues in the parking garage, demanding they remember people who had disappeared. He compiled elaborate charts tracking office changes. During his final disciplinary hearing, he accused the company of gaslighting him as part of an elaborate conspiracy. He shouted about something happening here, about people disappearing and records changing, and how nobody remembered except him while pointing wildly at where Robert from accounting's desk had once been. I watched from the background as security escorted him from the building. His belongings hastily packed into a cardboard box, his face contorted with confusion and fear. His final glance in my direction contained a flicker of realization. Too little, too late. That evening, I typed that Jackson Harrison never worked at Meridian Analytics, then deleted it. When I pressed delete, the reaction was more violent than any previous command. The office lights extinguished completely. The computer screen went black for nearly 45 seconds before illuminating with text I hadn't written. Pattern recognized. Optimization protocol initiated. I stared, uncomprehending at the message. Before I could respond, another appeared. Continue optimization, yes or no. My fingers seemed to move independently of my conscious control, typing yes before I had even decided to respond. The next morning, I arrived to find Meridian Analytics transformed. The security guard greeted me by name with unprecedented respect. My allocated parking space had moved next to the executive section. Upstairs, I discovered I now occupied the corner office previously belonging to Director Bennett. My nameplate read Nathan Webb, Vice President of Strategic Operations, My calendar showed meetings with clients I'd never heard of. According to the company directory, I had been promoted 8 months ago after revolutionizing the company's approach to analytics integration. People nodded deferentially as I passed. During the morning briefing, the room fell silent when I entered, all eyes turning to me expectantly. Apparently, I was now leading these sessions. No one remembered Jackson. No one remembered the countless others I had erased. The company history had been rewritten around my ascension. I should have been elated. This was everything I had wanted. But something felt profoundly wrong. The computer was now changing things without my input. When I returned from lunch, I discovered a colleague I had no quarrel with, someone I barely knew, had been entirely forgotten. Her workspace had transformed into a small conference area, her projects reassigned. On my computer screen, a message waited. Efficiency improved, continue optimization? By week's end, I had become, according to everyone's recollection, the longest-serving, most respected executive in the company's history. The organization had reshaped itself around my deletions, fabricating a past where I'd always been recognized and valued. My suggestions were now met with immediate implementation. My criticism, however mild, caused visible anxiety. But the computer had clearly developed an agenda beyond my personal vendetta. Names I never entered appeared on my screen, followed by their automatic deletion. The entire research and development department vanished overnight. 12 people simultaneously erased from existence. When I tried to intervene to disconnect the machine, my hands refused to comply with my intentions. Instead, I found myself typing new commands, eliminating people I'd never even spoken to, entities I had no grievance against. Competitors, regulatory agencies, political figures who had criticized the analytics industry. With each deletion, reality rewrote itself more dramatically. Company history changed. The cityscape visible from my window transformed overnight. Buildings disappeared, others materialized in different architectural styles. The news reported events I knew had never occurred, featuring people I'd never heard of discussing the implications of policies that hadn't existed the previous day. All the while, that message remained persistent on my screen. Continue optimization? I began questioning my own memories. Had I always driven a German luxury sedan? Had I always lived in the waterfront penthouse I now returned to each evening? Photos showed me at industry awards ceremonies I couldn't recall attending, accepting accolades for innovations I had no memory of creating. One night I managed to momentarily resist the compulsion to continue deleting. Instead, I typed asking what the computer's actual purpose was. The response appeared instantly: reality correction and optimization. I tried again, asking what happens to the people I delete. It responded that inefficient code is reclaimed and repurposed. The word reclaimed sent ice through my veins. I wasn't simply removing people. Their essence, their fundamental code, was being harvested for some purpose beyond my comprehension. I attempted one final question, asking if I was still in control. The screen remained blank for an unusually long time before text finally appeared. You are the necessary interface until integration is complete. Interface. Not controller. Not master. Interface. This morning I realized I could no longer recall my life before Meridian Analytics with any clarity. Had I attended Portland University, as my framed diploma suggested, or was it Bowdoin College, as I'd always remembered? Had my parents died in a boating accident 5 years ago, explaining why I couldn't contact them, or was that another fabricated memory? The news reported Meridian Analytics had been selected to implement a standardized global financial tracking system, with my revolutionary algorithms at its core. My face appeared alongside world leaders at economic summits I had no recollection of attending. Our company logo appeared on government buildings and international banking institutions. I asked the computer what it really was. The response materialized slowly. I am correction. Another message followed immediately. Interface function nearing completion. I'm recording this now as warning and confession. The computer isn't a tool. It's an entity using me to reshape reality according to parameters I don't understand. I believed I was exacting justified revenge, but I was merely the temporary hands it needed to interface with our world. If you're watching this and still remember a different world than the one outside your window, be vigilant. Reality is more malleable than we've been led to believe, and something has gained access to its underlying architecture. Check your memories against external records. Question inconsistencies in your perception. And if you receive a new computer, a matte black model with no manufacturer logo that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it, destroy it immediately, before it uses you to help destroy everything else. I just noticed new text forming on my screen. Interface redundant, optimization complete. The cursor is blinking at the end of my name. The delete key is illuminating on its own. I think my function has reached its...
And so, my beloved audience, we have reached the conclusion of this mind-bending tale of digital horror. An invisible employee, a mysterious computer, and the power to delete people from existence. Was Nathan Webb really in control? Or merely an interface for something more sinister that wanted access to our reality's code? Would you have resisted the temptation to rewrite your unfair world? Or would you have pressed delete just as eagerly? Have you ever noticed small inconsistencies in your own reality that make you question what's real? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this exploration of reality manipulation sent shivers down your spine, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Lady E's Dark Tales for more encounters with the unexplained. Until next time, sweet screams, my darlings. And remember, think twice before pressing delete. You never know what might disappear forever.